So welcome everyone to this new Meetup Online from Codemotion in conjunction or in company with Oracle. We will be celebrating the 25 years of Java, the ongoing innovation. And in this meetup, one second, and this meetup, in this meetup, we would like to introduce a little bit what we do from Codemotion. Codemotion is a company born in Italy in 2011. We usually do conferences, trainings, hackathons, meetups, and Codemotion Kids. And nowadays, we are moved to the online activities. I will suggest you to take a look to codemotion.com. Where we have, at this moment, we have a lot of online events like this meetup, webinars, coding challenge, online panels, and we will be having many conferences online in the second part of the year. Codemotion is proudly sustained by communities. We have more than 200 communities in our network in several countries, in Italy, Spain, Netherlands, Germany. You can check all the communities that are part of our network in our codemotion.com platform. And today's meetup, it will be led by Chad Arimura, also by Marco Pirrone and Sid Giorgi. We will be talking about Java, obviously, and a new hackathon that we will have in the upcoming weeks. So with that, I will leave you with the speakers. You can follow us in Facebook, in Twitter, or take a look to our site. And Chad, let me see if I can stop sharing and pass the floor to you.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, good. So thanks for having me today. I'm going to talk about the Java platform and where it is at after 25 years. So let me share my screen here, 1 second. Okay, so let me know if you can't see my screen through the chat. Otherwise, I'll get started. So my name is Chad Arimura. Thanks for the introduction. I run the developer relations team for the Java platform group at Oracle. And today I'm going to talk about Java and 25 years. Its birthday was just last month in May. But before I begin, a slide that everyone's probably seen before. This basically says, don't make buying decisions based off what I say, because some of what I say is future stuff. So after 25 years, Java is still the #1 language in the world. It is the most trusted platform. Just some of the statistics you can see at the bottom. There's over 12 million Java developers. 98% of some of the largest companies in the United States use Java. And that metric is also for globally as well, but I just pulled from the Fortune 100 job postings. And it's the #1 developer choice in the cloud. Pretty amazing statistics after a quarter century. And that doesn't happen by accident. The Java platform really has had a vision since day one at Sun Microsystems back in 1995 or 93 when they started working on it. And that's that the group has had a relentless pursuit for developer productivity and application performance in the face of constantly evolving trends. So programming paradigms, application styles, deployment models, hardware. 25 years, technology changes a lot. And to have a programming language interface against those trends when they're constantly evolving is no easy feat. But having a clear vision helps that. And this is done through a thoughtful approach to language evolution. There are really two forces at play. There are folks that want more change constant change, developer fashion of the week, hardware changes, trends that are coming up. And then there are folks that want less change. So the reality today is that Java programs that were written in Java 1.1, 20 years ago, are now still working on the Java virtual machine today. And that's an amazing statistic. There's a lot of focus on compatibility in the language and in the platform. Sometimes we believe that, like politics, the folks at the wheel are hated by both sides. People want more change or people want less change. But it's all about sort of thoughtful innovation of the language. So the Java platform, it's open source. Many people may not know that, but you can go and you can actually download the JDK, which is the Java Development Kit, which is basically the Java language and the JVM and a bunch of tooling in order to build your own version of Java. Thankfully, there are pre-built binaries available to use Java today, so you don't actually have to build it from source. But OpenJDK is where the Java platform is built. It's the place that the contributors to Java build the programming language that we know as Java. There are many companies that contribute to Java. So if you look at the diagram here, these are the issues fixed in version 13, which is the last version. You can see companies like Red Hat. You can see Google, SAP, IBM. There's some smaller companies like Azul that all contribute to Java. Of course, Oracle is the largest contributor, as we are also the stewards of OpenJDK, and we lead many of the innovation projects and are the primary contributors to Java. A few more slides on ecosystems. So many people believe that Java doesn't innovate anymore, and that it's slow to adapt to change. That it's simply not changing. People say, why would I program in Java when I've got all these other languages that are new and fresh and hip and they're innovating faster? And there's actually a good reason for that reputation. Because of the thoughtful design and Java's evolution, through 2017, new versions of Java were released every 2 to 5 years. Can you imagine there were 5 years in between versions 1.6 and Java 7 when we got rid of the dot release and just called it Java 7? There were 5 years between that time. And so that's an incredibly long time to wait for new features, and it's an incredibly long time to try and adapt a language and evolve it to modern trends. But this is the way that software was shipped historically, and the waterfall model and all that. Today, we're seeing a much different picture for Java. We have moved to a time-based release cadence. So no longer, releases are no longer geared around a single kind of feature like generics in 5, lambdas in 8, the modularity system in 9. Those things take a long, undeterminate amount of time to deliver. Now, every 6 months, like clockwork, on March 15th and September 15th, we deliver a new version of Java with new features for developers to use right away. Additionally, we provide early access builds to also use so that you can actually get your hands on the latest version before it's actually GA'd. And this has been an incredible change to the ecosystem and to the platform. So in other words, Java is innovating faster than ever. Also, it's predictable and it's approachable, meaning the amount of change to the language has gone down significantly in each release. So if you look at Java 9 in 2017, there were over 90 JEPs, or JDK enhancement proposals. That's kind of a meaningful change to the language and the platform. If you look at every version before 9, you see just as many JEPs, and then you'll see thousands of bugs that were actually fixed behind the scenes. You can view all of these bugs online. Everything is done in the public. But starting with Java 10 and the 6-month release cadence, we're now seeing much smaller releases that are not kind of major kind of stop the world upgrades. You can literally upgrade Java and see very little change in terms of breaking impact, but you'll get new features and new innovations in your hands right away. To celebrate the 25 years, I do want to mention that the Java community is running a campaign called Our World Moved by Java. So this is celebrating 25 years of Java and how much Java has moved the world for the past quarter century. Along with the 25 years, we've also announced a new source for news called inside.java. And then the idea behind inside.java is that you can you can get kind of an inside look at everything going on with the Java platform and all the innovations happening inside the Java group, available to you through a very easy layout, a very easy interface to be able to go. You can get RSS feeds. So this is sort of how you can stay up to date with many of the things happening in the Java community straight from the team that builds Java. Okay, so that was 9 minutes. We talked about ecosystem. We talked about innovation happening. We talked about how quickly now Java is evolving to be able to keep up with modern trends. And again, we talked about the thoughtful design and the vision behind Java. Let's turn to some of the actual features that you can get your hands on as a developer today. I'm going to go through the recent changes from Java 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'm just going to highlight a couple of the key features from each of those. So Java 10 was from 2018. We introduced a number of interesting features, both at the language level and the JVM, on the JVM as well. So if you're not familiar, the JVM is the Java virtual machine, which is where the Java programs are executed. It is an incredible piece of technology that has been built over 25 years. And it is one of the biggest advantages to Java of any language is simply the amount of innovation, the amount of just pure engineering hours that have gone into the Java virtual machine. So in Java 10, we saw a new garbage collector API, and we saw a lot of activity in the GC area. We saw a Graal JIT compiler come in, which is the Graal just-in-time compiler as an opt-in feature. And at the top, you'll see local variable type inference. I'm going to talk very briefly about that and application class data sharing. So the only thing I'm going to talk about class data sharing is that it's a feature that's been delivered over many versions of Java that makes your programs faster to launch, faster to start, without you changing any code whatsoever. It's basically a way of the JVM automatically detecting your class data and turning it into a cached version that can be easily mapped to memory, so that when you start your program, it can start much faster. And you can see from this diagram here, or this chart, that over time, a Hello World program out of the box is significantly faster using class data sharing. And so application class data sharing is taking your application classes. Most of you don't necessarily need to focus on stuff like this, but it's just a hint at a lot of the work that goes into Java to ensure that it is not only incredibly fast over time, because it's optimized at the bytecode level on the JVM, but it's fast at startup time as well. So for workloads like serverless and functions, these are the types of innovations that's preparing Java for that type of workload. Local variable type inference is a fairly what seemingly straightforward feature, but it has done wonders for the language. So traditionally what you have is you declare a variable type on the left and then an expression, and you set that variable to the expression on the right. But what we can actually do is infer the variable type by simply replacing with the var keyword. We can infer the variable type from the right side of the expression. This is not changing the way that it handles statically typed variables or strongly typed variables, but it makes the language more concise. It enables developers to focus more on the URL name, and it shortens the lines and it kind of lines them up. So it's a very nice way to sort of make programs less buggy, easier to read, and easier to write. Okay, moving on to Java 11. We didn't see a whole lot of changes to the language, but we saw a lot of VM changes, and I'll talk about a couple of these now. The Z garbage collector, or ZGC, or also known as ZGC, this is an incredible garbage collector whose aim is to take multiple terabyte heaps. So we're talking big data workloads, AI, ML types of workloads, and making it so that your garbage collector pauses for no more than 10 milliseconds. Garbage collection and GC pausing time tuning the GC is some of the hardest things to do today for somebody operating a Java application at scale. ZGC is a technology that enables you to focus much less on that. Flight Recorder is another operator tool that allows operators to basically take data from the JVM and with a negligible overhead, ship that out to an analytics application or something where you can actually define and view kind of events and statistics and analytics that of how your Java virtual machine is running. So the idea here is that with very little overhead, you can get data exposed from the JVM with just a level of detail that you can't get from other places. And moving on to Java 12, we saw the introduction of switch expressions, which are really cool. So I'm going to show those right now. Okay, so this is a switch statement. This is how you traditionally write a switch statement in Java. You define a variable at the top, you go into the switch statement, you have a number of cases, you break each case, and then you have a default case at the end in case it's kind of a fall through case, in case you didn't hit any of your other cases above. Now, it turns out that most people, when writing switch statements, or most developers, actually meant to write something like this, which is now called a switch expression. And this is actually taking, it's a much more concise way to write that switch statement into an expression. So now you're taking the result of the switch and assigning it to num letters. There's no default case here because if what you don't see is that we're switching on day, which is an enumerator or an enum, and we know all the cases of that. So we don't need a default case. And we're now using this sort of dash greater than sign, which is the lambda sign, to assign, to return the variable or the value. So this is a much more concise way to write what was probably in your head. And what Brian Getz always likes to say is, not only is this much easier to write, it's much easier to read, and there's very few places for bugs to hide now, as opposed to the previous, which there's all sorts of places where bugs may hide. In 13, we saw the switch expressions second preview. We saw text blocks, and we saw some work around ZGC, so we can actually uncommit memory that's being unused to the operating system. And let's talk about text blocks. So text blocks are another language level feature that allows you to take code that's often written like this, where you want to have like a multi-line string literal here. You need to escape a bunch. We've got the \n to do new line. We've got a bunch of quotes and pluses around. Everybody has written something like this before, and there are always bugs there. What we do with text blocks is we turn it into something much more concise, much more easy to read, much more easy to write, and much less buggy for your programs. And we do that by using 3 quotes as the escape signal, and then everything in between is now part of the text block. But what's really cool is we can actually take this and run, we have new methods now that we can run across that. And we can actually, inject in data into like %s, which you can see from the text block above. So much prettier, much easier to write. Okay, now this is the current release of Java. We are currently on JDK 14, and it was a big release. A lot of really good stuff in there. And then JDK 15 is slated for September 15th. So we saw a bunch of stuff in this release. I'll go through a little bit of this, but we saw a packaging tool. And so a packaging tool, what that aims to do is produce self-contained Java applications. And you can also create native executables for distribution in your environment. So for example, you can create a .exe or a .dmi. I believe DMI is what they call on the Mac. And what this enables you to kind of create a self-contained Java application. We saw JFR event streaming or flight recorder. Sorry, Java's JDK flight recorder. We're seeing data stream directly from JFR now, so we can stream it into analytics systems. We saw the first preview of records. I will talk about that. Now, just a brief, I will kind of go on a tangent for 1 second here. You see words like incubator and preview and second preview. What that means is a preview feature is a language level feature that we introduce as part of a release of Java that we believe is mostly final, but we're still providing, or we're still getting feedback from the community. There is no guarantee that it will work the way it does today when it becomes a standard feature in the language, and that's what preview is all about. In order to use it, you need to actually explicitly say when you compile your program that you want to compile with preview features, otherwise it will throw an error. When you want to run it, you need to run it by explicitly saying, run with preview features. With that said, a lot of these don't change at all through the previews. So generally we have one preview and then a second preview, and then it turns into a standard feature, but that's not guaranteed. It may have multiple previews to ensure that we get it right. And that because the language feature is there forever, or at least a long time. So we saw the second preview of text blocks. We saw helpful null pointer exceptions. Why don't I just show a quick example of these? Pattern matching. So if you've written Java, you've written a statement like this. Every program includes some kind of a logic that combines testing of an expression, has some certain type, and then a conditional extraction from that expression. So here, we're checking to see if object is a string. If it is, cast it, and then set it to S. This is we can actually make this even more concise through something called pattern matching for instance of, and it actually does a conditional extraction based off the instance of string. So if you look here, we check to see if object is a string. If it is, we extract string and we assign it to variable S. We no longer have to do any casting. We no longer have to explicitly set it inside the curly brackets or the curly braces. Now we can just do it all in one line. And the nice thing about that is there's a lot less places for bugs to hide, for casting bugs and stuff like that. And it will only evaluate, we can only use S inside there if that's true. If it's false, it'll fall through into like an else statement or something else. And pattern matching is actually something that's, it's setting the language up for many, many future innovations. And so we're going to see a lot more coming from pattern matching in the future. So for example, something like this can work really nicely with switch expressions. I don't think I have an example of that, but all of these features are designed and built in a way where they are very thoughtful with the way they play with the rest of the language. And so all of these things fit together nicely into a vision because we have many language architects that spend almost all of their time thinking about these problems and thinking about what the language is going to look like many years into the future. So with that, we've also added records. Records are quite exciting. It's something that, we did a video. If you saw our video from the Java 25 launch event, we got about 45 interviews, like self-shot interviews from folks throughout the community. And one of the questions we asked them was, what's your favorite feature that you've seen in the Java language recently? And almost unanimously, we saw records. We saw a lot of different features because people are excited about a lot, but records was a very popular one. So basically, what records are is a way to have a much more concise syntax for declaring classes that are generally just transparent holders for data, specifically immutable data, so data that's not going to change its structure over time or change. So this is like a kind of your classic class. You've got a point, you've got your X, Y, your class variables. And then you have getters and setters and hash code and equals compared to, if you program in Java, you have probably dozens, if not hundreds of these classes inside each of your applications. Well, records allows you to turn that into this. And you automatically get everything, all the functionality from this class, with just some limitations around the mutability of specific objects, namely identity. But this is really what it boils down to. And so this will significantly reduce boilerplate, places for bugs to hide, and make the language much easier to read and write, and open up the language to a lot of future innovation as well. Okay, I will move on to, and I see a question. Download the, yes, I will also send the presentation out to everybody afterwards. So Java 15. So this is actually, this is what's in Java 15. You can go to openjdk.java.net and then click on 15, and you'll see that 15, which is not, it will come out in September 15th, is actually pretty much locked down. It's in what we call ramp down phase 1. And so we've already figured out all of the different features that are going to go into it. And you can download an early access version to test a lot of this stuff out. So the two major things, and this is another really exciting release, but the two really exciting things we're seeing here, while we're seeing ZGC again, but it's turning into a standard feature, no longer experimental. We're seeing text blocks move into standard. And then we're seeing hidden classes and sealed classes. I'll talk briefly about those two. And then we're seeing the second preview of records, and some other kind of digital signature algorithm. So we're strengthening the security profile of Java with the Edwards curve algorithm and a few other things in there. So hidden classes are mostly for developers who are working on things like Java frameworks, and that allows them to much more easily generate classes at runtime that can be used indirectly via reflection, but not expose those classes to users of the framework itself. So they're non-discoverable. They have a life cycle where they spin up and spin down very easily, and it deprecates an API that was never intended for use by the general public anyways, called Sun, Misc, and Safe Defined Anonymous Class API. So this is more for kind of developers of frameworks themselves. Sealed classes is a change to the way that classes actually can define their access modifiers. So if you think about the way class hierarchy works, you have classes and you have inheritance. And inheritance was designed, object orientation of Java was one of the biggest language innovations in history. And a lot of it was around code reuse. But sometimes you don't actually want, inheritance the way that it is used today. Sometimes you want to define exactly which classes can inherit or extend a particular class. Sealed classes allow you to do that with two new modifiers called the sealed modifier and the permits clause. And this actually opens up a lot of innovation for the language, and you can do all sorts of stuff. So for example, let's say you want to model a certain domain where, like, for example, shapes that are supported by a graphics library or types of loans that were supported by a specific financial application. You only want certain classes to have the ability to extend a particular interface or class. So it looks something like this. You take a particular class shape, you define it as sealed, modify it, and then you permit it to be extended by circles, rectangles, and squares. And that's it. Any other class that tries to extend or inherit from an interface from class shape will get an error. And so this gives you more explicit control over your classes. And some other examples, if you're in the same module or same package, you can ignore the package kind of declaration. And if you're in a single file, the permits is inferred. So this is sealed classes, and this is something definitely to take a look in JDK 15 for the way that you kind of solve your problems and model your different domains. Sealed classes is a big innovation. The other really cool thing is, in this case, for things like switch expressions, the way that enumerators, we know all of the values in enumerator ahead of the time, and we don't need to have a defaults clause at the end. Same goes for sealed classes. If we permit, say, circles, rectangles, and squares, then we know that the cases in a switch expression, if you're switching across, for example, a shape object, you know that it can only be a circle, a rectangle, or a square, and nothing else. So I'm obviously not going to read through this slide, but I've been talking about particular JEPs, JDK enhancement proposals. This is just an example, a very short list of bugs that have been resolved in Java releases 12 and 13. And again, this is all about relentless progress of the language forward. So I hope this gives you just a brief idea that Java is certainly not standing still, and it is innovating at a very fast pace. So in the couple minutes that I have left, I am going to just briefly talk about some of the longer term innovation projects in Java. So what I've covered so far are features in the language that you can use today. Some of those features are coming from these projects, code names, that are sort of longer term innovation projects. And each of these projects has a project lead and a team that's thinking about how to evolve the language over time for certain types of workloads or applications. For example, if you think about Project Panama on the far left of the screen, Project Panama is all about making Java easier to interface with native code. If you think about AI and ML, artificial intelligence, machine learning, most AI ML code is written in native code, not written in Python, but it's written in C++. In that instance, the only way to interface today is using the Java native interface, or JNI, which is very kludgy for a reason. What Panama does is aimed to make that much easier to work, so the ecosystem can build frameworks around AI and ML much quicker and much easier with much less chance for bugs. So this is a particular thing that will help Java catch up in the AI ML space. So that's something to to watch. Valhalla is a much longer term project, but aims to make Java run much better on modern hardware. And so I would talk for hours about Valhalla, but it's a project you can take a look at, openjdk.java.net. Project Loom is something that introduces a concept called virtual threads, and that is intended to make concurrency simple again. So you no longer need to use the traditional threading model. You can actually have millions of virtual threads. So these are for highly concurrent applications. So when you're building things like microservices or microservice frameworks, this is preparing Java to be a much more higher concurrent language, making it easy to write concurrent applications again. And then the last one here, or the last couple I'll talk about, Amber is continuously improving developer productivity. This is just a bucket for many of the language level features that we've seen in Java, such as switch expressions, local variable type inference, text blocks. Those are all part of Project Amber. Portola is all about getting Java and the JVM to run inside Alpine Linux, ultimately making Java more container friendly. So specifically, this is for the Muscle C library port. So we have ports of Java for Alpine Linux, and Portola is the project that kind of wraps that all together. And then I've talked about ZGC or ZGC, and that's the low latency garbage collector. And with that, I think I am pretty much out of time, but I hope that in that very, very short presentation, you were able to get a snapshot of the things that are happening in Java today, the innovation that's happening in the ecosystem, and that Java is certainly not a language to count out for the next 25 years. In fact, we intend to keep Java at the top of all the charts, and it is certainly a language that you should think about choosing for your next application. Thank you very much. With that, I can take questions.
Yes, just to let people know, I think that you don't see me, so I'm already also only on voice. In case if you want, you can write or type your questions over Q&A. In the end, we will have another Q&A session, but we have a couple of questions already. Chad, if you want to answer already, are you prepared?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I got to click on the Q&A section. Sorry.
Yeah, we have at the end, but let's because this was one key question made by in the middle of your presentation, made by Alessio, and he asked, how does this new way of writing switch affect the performance of the software? I
Yeah.
assume that.
Yeah, no, good question. In fact, we got that question. I got that exact same question in another presentation, and I didn't know the exact answer to that. And I think the reality of the answer is that the answer that nobody wants to hear is it depends. It totally depends on your particular setup, your particular code, your particular case. But for the most part, I think what tests have found, and by the way, speaking of performance, performance is certainly one of the very top top things that we try and keep in mind. In fact, the JVM is an incredibly performant piece of technology that will optimize your code over time. And so we have an entire team dedicated to ensuring the performance doesn't regress. And if it does, there's a very good reason for that. And so to switch expressions, there is a negligible performance hit. And so when switching to sort of these new Amber features like local variable type inference, also known as VAR, switch expressions, text blocks, you may experience, depending on your use case, some performance changes, but in the most part, they should be negligible. If you do, and by the way, I will add, one of the greatest things that any person or developer can contribute back to Java is by simply trying features out in the latest releases and providing feedback back to the team. So if you see performance regressions or something that you believe is an issue, please let us know. There's plenty of ways to get a hold of the team through mailing lists and openjdk.java.net.
Cool. Yeah, now I can see myself. In any case, we will have 2 more minutes, I think, for one question, and then we can continue with the Q&A session at the end of this meetup. Again, all attendees are encouraged. Basically, we prefer to use the Q&A window, so we can follow up a little bit better the questions. But we have one more here, previous question that is Java looking into microservices, frameworks, and APIs?
Yes, microservices, frameworks, and APIs. I have 2 minutes, so I'll answer one question I see here. Do you think 6 months, and I'll come back to that one. Do you think 6 months is enough time for developers to adapt? Another great question. It's interesting that you asked that. When the 6-month release cadence first came about, I think the community or a lot of people in the community believed that it was going to be too fast and that Java would never be able to move that quickly and that nobody would ever get behind it and everybody would always stay on JDK 8 or 7 or 6 or whatnot. And oddly enough, the community often said that about previous versions before the new one was released. But what we found in the last couple of years is that the 6-month release cadence has been one of the best things to happen to the Java ecosystem. We've seen a large part of the ecosystem galvanize around a 6-month cadence. In fact, many of the frameworks that people are used to today are now automatically adopting the early access builds in their CI systems. So more and more the ecosystem is going to keep up with that release cadence. So I hope that helps answer your question. I could go longer, but about microservices and APIs, yes. So the Java team and the Java JDK, the people that work on the JDK are often thinking about the underlying aspects of those workloads. So for example, For microservices, one of the most important thing is ensuring that the language is performant at high volume, high throughput, high concurrency. That's where projects like Loom come in. Loom aims to help solve that problem on a long-term basis and do it the right way for the language and the platform. And that allows the community to build amazing things on top. So for example, if you've seen Halidon or Quarkus or Micronaut, GraalVM, you see these kind of, or Spring Boot even, at the higher part of the stack where developers interface. Those can take advantage of many of the features that are being built by the Java team today. And so we are absolutely thinking about APIs and microservices and high concurrent applications. And then to build things like APIs and microservices, you want to look to the frameworks that are out there like Spring Boot, Quarkus, Halidon. Take a look at MicroProfile and what's happening from the Eclipse Foundation at an attempt to kind of standardize some of that as well.
Okay, cool, cool. Okay, perfect. So thanks, Chad, again for the presentation. This overview about Java and how it's an ongoing innovation. And it's the turn now for Marco Pirrone. So
Okay.
I'll ask Chad to stop sharing. So Marco, I don't know if you have anything to share, but you can share as well. Marco will talk about hackathons and challenges by Codemotion. So Marco, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Francisco. I share my screen. Oh, what is that one? Okay, hi everybody. Oh, just a moment. That's it. Okay, could you see my screen, Francisco?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
now we see a very, very brief introduction to the challenge topics and the context. We have 5 minutes to describe the challenge. As you can see from the title, we talk about low-touch economy. That is the way in which business have been forced to operate in order to succeed as a result of COVID-19, the new scenario we are facing now at this moment. The world is changing. Before the pandemic, there was already a lot of discussion about the implication of technology for the future of the work. However, the future has arrived sooner. So many country, company, and workers shifted to remote working in order to contain the transmission of COVID-19. This dramatically changed how we work. And the pandemic forced everyone to find solution that did not damage citizen, business in general. That is, it is necessary to mitigate health risk, and there are shifts in consumer behavior, new regulation, and new supply chain in general. Medical aspect and business leaders assume COVID-19 will directly influence the economy. They talk about 2021. This is the year in which we can see the effect of the COVID-19. No, now we have to survive this kind of pandemic. So the business model, we need a business model tailored to this new normal while keeping everyone safe as possible. Anyway, the message is the world is changing. So in this moment, we shift from business as usual to business as unusual. Now we need a smart, effective, and most important, safe work environment. The so-called as business unusual so far. In this brand new vision, we need to consider several aspects that we have in mind during the hackathon. Prepare, so get ready to return to work and plan to return to work. Inform, establish and return to work program, and establish who will communicate with staff, and prevent, that is, ensure that health and hygiene is managed and maintained, and recover the lost work. This is 4 pillars that you have to have in mind when you talk about this kind of business, so business unusual. We have to reshape on shape a new work and so a new world. With this hackathon, the message is we want to have a new kind of work in general or work environment. So in particular, the challenge is to think and create innovative solution that will allow all of us to return to work in a safe environment, optimizing workspace, and in general productivity. The goal will be development of working prototype. So we talk about prototype, a real application dedicated to, I don't know, private, public, office stations, banks, restaurants, I don't know, and so on. And what we need in this hackathon is innovative, are innovative solutions that help people from any type of sector and business to have a safe, a productive, and in general, safe environment and safe return to work. The work we know will never be the same. So we need a new and a smart approach that can lead to an advance from some, even a few type of business. The rules are very, very simple. Build your own team from minimum 3 to maximum 5, but we have the rule, we supply you a rule. Be sure to include in your team member that skill you need to develop a functional prototype, and register to the hackathon, use the Oracle platform to realize your idea and submit your project. So very, very simple rule. CodeMotion and Oracle. Your team will receive support, suggestion, and guidance from team mentors composed by Oracle and CodeMotion people. In order to create your prototype, you will be able to access to Oracle tools for developer. The Oracle and CodeMotion staff will give you all the tools you need to develop your idea. So you have developer.oracle.com. You have a suite of tools that helps you to realize your idea. But we need not only your idea, we need a prototype, we need a real application. In order to create this prototype, you have to be compliant with government's resolution concerning social distances, mask, temperature checks, and so on. And so your application can give the base for a good transition towards the new smart and safe work environment. So this is the real focus of the challenge, the real focus of this hackathon. In particular, each team shall develop the project through the use of developer Oracle tools, and then you can find the link. We can send you several email with a link and with the access to the platform. And you will have access for 30 days. The instruction for accessing the platform will be specified for each participant, and each participant team must submit his project before and no later than 5 p.m. on Thursday, 9 July of this year, 2020, using a specific submission form, and I show you a link now. This is the link that you can use to submit your application. It is important that you fill in all field that you need during the submission. So there is a team of mentor that helps you to find the right way to arrive your goal. That is, define a new prototype, define an application for the new world with COVID-19, for a low-touch economy. So the bottom line that I want to give you, and I finish my time, is that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, also in emergency, but in a usual way. That's it. I stay in 5 minutes.
No, but it's okay.
Sorry.
Thanks, Marco. We will share the link for the hackathon on the chat later. well, or now if you can, I'm gonna pass the mic and the floor and everything, the stage to Sid Joshi. Sid will talk about the Oracle technologies. So I'm gonna ask Marco to close webcam
Yep.
and all that. And Sid, the floor is all yours.
All right, thank you. Let me show you my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep, perfect.
Hi guys, I'll try to be very quick over here for you. I just want to quickly introduce you to the technology in Oracle Cloud that's going to be available to you for doing your hackathon, or the capabilities available for you to build your application or build your innovation that you will be like to do. Before anything going further, obviously the safe harbor statement, because some of the technology which I'll be talking about is early access or will be available to everybody soon, but we can touch on that. So Oracle Cloud for cloud native and DevOps and database and infrastructure. So when you'll be building your hackathon, your prototypes or workable prototypes, you will be working on the best infrastructure on the cloud in the market, which is on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Generation 2, where you'll get your compute, the virtual machines, you'll get all type of storage, the block storage, the file storage, your networking capabilities, your key management for if you want to bring private key and make it very secure based application, or the compliance and management tooling. You have all the powerful products for the cloud native development aspects perspective. You have Oracle managed Kubernetes environment, so you do not have to worry about managing the Kubernetes platform, just looking after your nodes in the Kubernetes. You have a Docker compliant registry engine. If you want to build serverless functions or serverless APIs, you have functions as a capability available to you. If you want to do a lot of, let's say, Kafka-based streaming implementation, you want to pull a lot of data from a lot of different systems, put it in a queue to ad hocly pass that through multiple different systems. You can use the streaming part of the platform. If you want to do like event-based action to say you've picked up a file on a block storage and you want to do some activity or push it to a function or so on, you can use an eventing service completely compatible with the open source API format. If you want to do an API gateway or protect your APIs that you're building for throttling or policies and so on, you can leverage the API management capability as well. But not only that, you can also build your whole CI/CD tooling or a low-code way of building your web applications by Visual Builder. You can have monitoring aspects. You can do email and notification delivery to an end user using a email or notification alarm system. You also have the power of Oracle database at hand available to you for use, maybe with autonomous transaction processing, which is a high volume, high data intensity database completely managed and maintained by Oracle. But for a developer perspective, it's just one click of a button, clicking a database, creating a schema, and off you go without having to do a lot of maintenance or looking around for it. If you are doing a lot of analytical stuff, then you might go with the flavor of the autonomous data warehouse. If you wanted to build any like NoSQL kind of a database as well, that's also available to you as part of the tier for the hackathon. We also got a lot of developer toolkits. So if you want to do a Cloud Shell to build any of your Cloud Shell to do interaction with the Oracle Cloud with CLI or something else, you can do that through Cloud Shell. You have Terraform, Ansible, or Chef skills. You can use that as well in Oracle Cloud. It's a pretty open source or open source friendly platform in the cloud. And if you are building with Java, obviously, but if you want to build with any other polyglot languages, with Spring Boot, Halidon, Graal, Ruby, Node, you can easily do that as well and build your applications on Oracle Cloud. Other PaaS services that are available to you is a digital assistance, which is a very quick and easy way of building chatbots for your businesses or for interacting with any person. You can also build analytics dashboard quick and easily with an analytics cloud with a single click of button, preparing a whole environment for you. If you are into data science and data science innovation side of things, you have access to that as well. If you want to integrate with various different applications in a very simplified way, in a low-code way, then Oracle Integration Cloud is another solution which allows you to not only integrate, but also do an automation like process orchestration experience in that. And if you want to build a local site, then you can also use Content and Experience Cloud as a service to build that side of things. When you sign up for the hackathon, you get Oracle Cloud free trial for 30 days for the value of up to $500. All the information can be found on the site, which I'll just quickly go through to you. Just give me a second. I'll be sharing this link, the deck in a while with you guys. But when you click on the link, the always free tier, you'll see that you get 30-day free trial. Instead of $300, you'll get $500. You can access all the services I just mentioned to you around infrastructure, the database, the application development, the analytics, and so on. I'll also be sharing links for if you want to learn, prepare yourself, or just see what's there, how to use Oracle services. Those useful guidance will also be available. After those 30 days, that cloud account that you'll be creating or using will convert automatically into an always free tier, which is a free tier for you to use forever. You don't have to pay for it at all. You get 2 autonomous databases, up to 20 gig of storage. You will get 2 virtual machines with a small size. You get X amount of storage and additional services as well. So that's just a quick wrap up for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Sid. Thanks again. And I think that probably Chad, we have a couple of, well, you already answered the questions on the Q&A, but we have a couple more. Let me see. So if you want to show your face and unmute yourself, it would be ideal. And also if Sid wants to reply as well. The chat, well, people always, I have a question here that says, and this is probably because of CodeMotion, and since we are so close with the communities, how strong is the Java community today?
Java community, oh, that's a good one. In fact, I mentioned the video that we had created. I'll make sure to send out a link to the video if you haven't seen it, but it was a brief kind of keynote style video for our launch event a month ago. And what I heard in the hours and hours of content that I received back from the community is that one of the things that they thought of I asked them word association. When I say Java, you say, and many of them said community. And that was because Java, over its 25 years, community has always been at the center of how Java was kind of built and marketed to the world. And so, at Sun Microsystems before Oracle and now at Oracle, community is extremely important for many reasons. And we're doing a lot to invest in it. So there's the Java user group program where you can find hundreds of Java user groups around the world with Java user group leaders who are helping shape how Java is promoted and how technical talks are done all around the world. Many of those Java user groups are turning virtual now and broadening their horizons to developers from all around the world. So even if you don't have a user group in your particular area, well, the world is very virtual now, which has been one of the kind of side impacts of everything going on. There's the Java Champion program. There's the JCP, which is the Java Community Process, which helps shape and frame how the language evolves over time. And of course, there are Java conferences. There are more Java conferences than any other language in the world. So community is really at the heart of how Java has evolved over time and will continue to do so.
Cool. Well, one more question, and again, I encourage attendees to make questions over the Q&A window. Well, we have here Alessio, a question to Chad. This is personal. Could you please explain a little bit better what do you mean by saying helpful null pointer exception? Well, I could figure,
Yes,
well.
you know, I actually thought I had a slide on that, but then I realized it wasn't there. So I apologize. Maybe I'll try and add it before I send the presentation. But helpful null pointer exception. So every Java developer has probably seen the notorious null pointer exception. And oftentimes, if you have kind of many layers of indirection in your classes calling each other and your objects calling methods from other classes, the null pointer exception won't lead you to where you're trying to go. What helpful null pointer exceptions was, a very kind of simple addition to the language, but it turned out to be very popular in that you actually have to explicitly tell the launcher that you want to show. I forget, it's a kind of a long one, but you can see in the docs in the JEP. I'll make sure to send that out, where it will actually trace back the source of the null pointer exception. So where you actually got the null value. And that's extremely helpful because you could have like 10 chained methods and in there was a null value, but it has no idea where it was. Now we'll actually tell you which method and which line of code from which class that null pointer came from. And so that will not only help you in your own applications, but it will help you trace things back through frameworks upon dependencies. And it's very, very helpful. So that was a contribution by SAP.
I think everybody will love that because so many times you have had null pointer exception, you're tearing your hair out which part of my code is giving that issue. It's amazing. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, one more question and to leave people a little bit of time to think about it. And this is something that came from Mara. Over the years, the death of Java has been announced several times. Why do you think that Java has always remained a popular language? That's my question. That would be my question as well. And always at the top of the TIOB charts, like something that it remains as a language, for people as programmers, developers, backenders, and all that. Why it's still popular?
Gosh, well, Java has certainly been declared dead more times than I can count on both my hands and my feet, probably as well. The popular saying today is that Java is the COBOL of today's languages. And I think, a lot of that stems from simply the fact that Java has been dominant for so long, and there's got to be someone to try and take down, of course. I think there's an expression, I can't remember the source of it, but there's two types of programming languages, the one that developers complain about and the ones that nobody uses. And so you definitely get a very vocal stance on where Java is today. And a big part of that, my theory is that if you look back at the release cadence prior to 2017, when you saw 5 years go by without the release of something new, you can certainly believe or think that Java, that language is not innovating and not moving very quick, and that it's probably going to die over time. On the flip side, you see languages that come up and they say, we're going to solve the world's problems, and they have this amazing ability to start with a blank slate and say, we're going to solve things exactly the way that we want to, and it's going to be great. And it comes out and it solves these problems, and then developers get really excited and they get behind it. And a lot of them actually design on top of the JVM. So Java is not the only language you run on the JVM. You have many other languages. And then what happens is the Java language the Java language designers look very carefully at the things that developers, the trends that push those languages to release those things. And then they make thoughtful decisions on how those things work themselves into the language, not only to take into account the 20 years or the 15 years of applications that have already been written, but what those things are going to look like for the next 25 years. And so what Brian Getz always likes to say, he's one of the chief architects of the language, is if lambdas or generics looked like the first version that somebody proposed, we would have had them way earlier, but nobody would be using it today. And lambdas are so clean and concise, and they just feel right because there was so much effort put into it. And so then it's this thoughtful evolution And it's this thoughtful preparation for how the language evolves for things like AI, ML, microservices, containers, and all these trends, and not jumping on that fashion that I think is setting up Java for the next 25 years. Does it need to think very carefully about how to continue the education model in universities? Do we need to think about how to continue making sure that Java is the language that people choose before something like Python or Node.js? Those languages are very easy to get started. They're very concise, and there's very good shell programs, REPLs. There's all sorts of tooling that have made them popular in education. And so we're thinking about a lot of that today and how to evolve the language. So it's a long-winded answer, but hopefully that helps you understand what we're thinking.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't know if Java will be here in the next 25 years, but could be. It could be an option. Okay, cool. Thanks, Chad. Thanks, Sid. Thanks, Marco.
Thank you, guys.
And in case that
You're welcome.
anyone wants to know a little bit more about the hackathon, the Oracle also challenge, and all that, we'll be sharing this recording later. And you can contact all these people, lovely speakers, through the Twitter account. And hope that you enjoy this online meetup, even though that it's usually this kind of a new reality forces us to move online. Hope you enjoy it, and thanks for your questions. And hopefully we'll see you next time soon. From Codemotion, we will be hosting a couple of meetups online in the near future. So if you're in Europe and are you watching us right now, please take a look to codemotion.com and the events section, and you will find a lot of events, meetups run by the community and run by Codemotion. And we will be promoting and publishing very soon, if it's not already published, the hackathon that Marco mentioned before. So thanks everyone. Thanks for participating. Thanks for joining and watching. And hope to see you soon, virtually or not so virtually. Thanks a lot.
Bye, guys.